Welcome to Talking Giants presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. We got a mix preview for the draft. We're looking at running backs and tight ends. This is a position, Justin, for the Giants where they have two star players, right? And Saquon Barkley and Darren Waller. So we figured we'd put these two positions together because we're going to be looking for depth. But there's a handful, like most of these are done because of top 30 visits, right? Like 3 tight ends for top 30 visits and 2 of the backs top 30 visits, and then pro day visits. So, Justin, how are you?
I'm good, Bobby Skinner. 6 days. Next week is it, man. Next week is it. It's one of the weekends that we look forward to throughout the entire year, even more than winning some games during the regular season. The New York Football Giants are going to become a much better football team this week. I'm going to say that plenty of more times as we get closer to the draft, but it makes me feel good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm ready. I'm excited to talk about these running backs and these tight ends. I think they're all different too. Like, we're not looking at like a prototype, which, for the position, we don't really have a read on what they like for running backs. And then tight end, you have Darren Waller, obviously, who's unreal, top of the league receiving threat, not a blocker, and then Bellinger, who's more of a two-way player. And then you look at Buffalo. So we don't really have a prototype, so we're going off of these top 30 visits. Before we get into it, Joe Schoen talked to the media today. There really wasn't much, and I know there's going to be like huge speculation with the Saquon stuff, but you can tell like, hey, negotiations are kind of hard and fast right now with Saquon Barkley and his reps. Like Joe Schoen is not going to give them anything, because every time they asked him about Saquon Barkley, he said, haven't talked to, no update since we last, since owner meetings. Nothing's changed. Haven't talked to him. Like, so they're playing hardball with each other, and they're not giving the agency anything to really go at. Like, he wouldn't expound on that. Like, hey, we love Saquon. We want him to be a part of this team. He's important. Like, he's just quick, and that was the only time he would give those short answers. So I know people speculate like crazy. Like, could he be traded? No, I don't see that happening. But it does kind of show like these negotiations they're not budging.
Yeah, and something that Joe Schoen also said just about roster building and about the NFL draft that is significant, and I do think it's true, especially this press conference more than any is all about, smoke screen season, and you kind of want your GM to lie a little bit. The presser before the draft. What are you looking for? What do you want to do? Kind of want him to lie at least a little bit. But what I do think matters, and this is a serious answer, is you draft not just based on your 2023 needs, but you're also looking at, well, whose contract is coming up? How many years do we have Leonard Williams left on the books? How many years do we have Saquon Barkley on the books? So you're looking at, certain positions that maybe are of need right now. They could be dire needs next year. And, at least running back, we're talking about running backs and tight ends today. At least running back is a position that the Giants could be drafting, not necessarily to fill a hole for this year. Matt Breida's still here, Saquon Barkley's still here, but they could be drafting to fill a hole for next year if Saquon Barkley is not part of this future, and Joe Schoen is playing really hardball with Saquon Barkley. But also, Bobby, the tight end position is still interesting too, because I still do believe part of this, maybe it's a little bit of rumor, speculation of even over the last 2 years, the Giants have constantly been looking to upgrade the tight end position in some way. And part of me still has this feeling that maybe they still want to do that, even though Darren Waller and what's his fucking face?
Daniel Bellinger
are on the team. Thank you. Very good speech right there, and I just ruined it. Do you have any response to that about kind of looking for needs, kind of maybe 2 years out instead of just looking at it for one?
I mean, you know me. I'm a best player available guy, and even more so day 3. Like day 3, the likelihood of these guys turning into good players is very unlikely. So take the one that you think has the best chance out of it, no matter what position that guy is.
Right, and I was even thinking like, looking at a tight end like Musgrave, which that's a day 1, day 2 kind of guy, or even adding a tight end like that, which
it'd be surprising if they did that.
There are certain elements that I adamantly disagree with that, and we'll get to that when we start actually talking about tight ends, but I think we want to start talking about running backs first.
Yeah, let's start with running backs, and this has been a guy that's been linked to the Giants for some time. Was on a top 30 visit. Dane Brugler mocked him there at pick 89. And that is Kendre Miller, running back out of TCU. 5'11", 215 pounds. Nice running back size. Put up 1,400 rushing yards for them. Justin, I really like Kendre Miller. I think he is a diverse back, and they ran basically 50-50 gap and zone stuff at TCU. And I think he's a solid athlete. Like, his speed is solid, and it's an above average speed for his size. And there's not a ton of flash to Kendre Miller's game. Like, he has really good contact balance. Like, he's not easy to go down. But what I really like about him is his vision, man. Like, he sees plays develop really well. Like, he can see where, okay, this linebacker's flowing this way. And he'll also influence linebackers and has a really nice, like, lateral jump cut to work off of them. So he's very patient, like, sets his blocks up well, like, sees stuff coming, and then like has that good contact balance to where he's not going to go down from weak tackle attempts.
All right, you ready for me to talk about Kendre Miller? I mean, are you ready? I think this might be the longest that I go on a prospect because I have numbers and I am in love. This is the first really kind of day 2, day 3 prospect that I'm really kind of slamming my fist on the table for, that I really want him in Giants, but partially because I think even though we're talking about him first, Miller's going to be a guy that's going to go after like Tyjae Spears. He's going to go after, I think, a decent amount of running backs in this class, and this also speaks to just how deep this running back class is. But Kendre Miller, Bobby, I don't know if you mentioned it, but I'll mention it again if you didn't. 20 years old, turning 21 in the month of June.
Class.
Young, super young. And I like a lot, you like your running backs that don't necessarily have a lot of tread on their tires. That's very, very attractive. One of, if not the highest explosive run rates in this class at 8.3% an explosive run rate of 20 plus yards. So why that's so important, there have been a lot of people, a lot of, analytics people that I follow. They do a lot of good work, and one of the things that they found that one of the, if not the most transferable metric from the college game to the program in terms of predicting running back success is explosive run rate. I mean, I'll even go to last year. Let's go to last year, for example. Last year, James Cook led the class last year in explosive run rate at 8.1%. Didn't get a lot of work, and his game is kind of tough to,
go 2 or 3 years ago because it's rookies are just started playing.
But we'll even go to Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker was number 2, 8%. Breece Hall was number 3, 6.8%. Damian Pierce was number 7, 5.1%. Rashad White, who had a pretty solid rookie year, you liked him, coming out of Arizona State last year, 5.3%. All those guys on the top 7, especially Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, we already know that they had solid rookie years as well. I can go back and maybe I'll tweet out over the last 2-3 years. But that's one of the traits, one of the metrics that transfers best in the NFL, and Kendre Miller is one of the best and almost creeping up towards 10%. That was better than James Cook last year. He's 250 pounds. He shakes and he shimmies much. It doesn't even, if you didn't look up his weight, you don't even know that he moves like that.
He moves really well for that size.
Easy change of direction in the box. The balance and the contact balance is insane. The dude will sometimes be like, it looks like he's about to tumble down and do a somersault. He'll somehow catch himself, and he'll continue to get yards after contact. 13th among draft eligible players in yards after contact per attempt. 8 most runs of 10 plus yards, tied for 5th most rushing plays of 15 plus yards, 6th in missed tackles forced among draft eligible players, at least one explosive play, 20 plus yards in 12 of 14 games in 2022, averaged 6.7 yards per carry throughout his career, and shows a little bit of promise as a receiver despite not being targeted enough. And I saw some kind of reports, Bobby, some write-ups being like, well, he's 215 pounds, nearing 220, but he doesn't really run like it. I can agree with that. Like, he's not like Brandon Jacobs. He's not like a power back. He's not like A.J. Dillon. But if you watch some of his goal line carries, and TCU does run a little bit of a fake offense, Big 12 offense, but if you see some of his goal line carries, it's conventional, under center, put a fullback there too, and the power that he does show from his legs, it is there. This is not a back that's 215 pounds that wants to run like he's 185. He does use the power when he has to and in those short yardage situations. And I do think that will also transfer over to the next level as well. So I really love Kendre Miller. If you're thinking about like a Tyjae Spears in round 3, I offer you to really consider Kendre Miller in round 4 as in a player that I think Kendre Miller is going to transfer even better than a guy like Tyjae Spears at the NFL level. He has the size. He has the pedigree that already shows that he's ready to rock and roll. I implore you to take this guy in round 4 versus looking at any other running back in this class early day 2 or day 1.
Yeah, I mean, I have him rated higher than Tyjae Spears, even though Tyjae Spears is a more fun player, like, to me. Not by much. I think by like one letter grade, I have them different. I have Kendre Miller as like my B-, which is early 3rd, and then Tyjae Spears is a late 3rd. I get the goal line stuff, but there is like, the game of football is not played at the goal line and there is too often where he kind of plays high and he just doesn't run with power to run through good tackle attempts, but he's going to take every weak tackle attempt and run through it. Coming off that MCL injury, so that's obviously a little worrisome, but he's only the youngest guy in the class, 20 years old, will be 21 when the season starts, I believe. I think he's just, again, running back can be a position where we get lost in the sauce of flash and stuff, which obviously all that stuff matters, but Kendre Miller, like you said, he creates the explosive plays, even though he's not like the fastest straight line guy in the world. Like, he created them just as much as anybody else, and was able to split safeties even at times with his speed. So I like him, man, and his vision to me is just top tier. And like I said, like he'll let plays develop. He'll see where things, players are flowing. And if a linebacker's doing his job well, he'll influence that linebacker and then cut them off and has these really nice lateral cuts off of them. So yeah, like this is, we look at top 30 visits and stuff, and this was like, ooh, I'm excited that this was a top 30 visit for the Giants. And like you said, if he is somehow there in the 4th round, I would love getting a Kendre Miller out of TCU. And they brought him in for a top 30, so hopefully they were able to clear him medically and stuff like that. Obviously that plays a factor in this, coming off that MCL injury in the Michigan game. And like you said, he does have some power to him, so if you can harness that and translate that some more to the NFL, like, he's going to be a good back for a team. And he holds up as a blocker pretty well. Like, out of the 4 running backs we're going to talk about, Kendre Miller is the best blocker. And they didn't use him much in the receiving game, but like, I think he can do an adequate job there too. So he is, to me, he's a 3-down back. Yeah,
plus 1.1 rushing yards over expected per attempt too. We finally have a position where I can look at metrics that I like looking at the NFL level. That usually means if you're a good player or a bad player. And running back is one of those spots. And Kendre Miller has one of the best rushing yards over expected per attempts in this class. Yet he's not seen as one of the tip-top running backs in this class. And I don't really get it, but I kind of want to keep it that way. Let's keep it that way until day 3 of the draft, where the Giants can snag him.
Next guy on this list is the guy I have rated higher than Kendre Miller, but he's not a top 30, so I didn't want to say him first. Zack Charbonnet out of UCLA. Justin, you fell in love with a UCLA running back before. Do you remember his name?
No, gosh, no. It was a funky name, right?
No.
JJ. He was really JJ Taylor. No, that was Arizona.
No, oh yeah, it was me. I like Joshua Kelly, who came from UCLA.
There was a running back that was really, really small that had a funky name that I liked a couple years ago. But
that was JJ Taylor, not Puka Williams, right?
Puka Williams, that's who I'm thinking of.
He moved to. We had a big who's going to be better in the league, because we were looking at round 5, 6 running backs, Puka Williams versus Javian Hawkins. Well, I don't think either one of them's ever gotten an NFL carry. We didn't. Nobody won. That was 2020. Let's look at 7th round running backs, and then they would draft Gary Brightwell.
Well, I guarantee you, if you actually really wanted to revisit the debate, you would find some sort of stat or some sort of see, look at this one play that Bobby Skinner would win the debate, because you like to win things.
Let's figure it out. Javian Hawkins stats.
Let's figure it out. Puka Williams. Yeah, but I realize JJ Taylor. I think we had a debate about that too, and JJ Taylor's been
a JJ
Taylor's been
too.
just fine for the Pats. What are you saying?
I said Javian Hawkins was a hometown guy too. All right, so Hawkins was with the Rams May 4th, 2022. I think he might win this because I think Puka Williams was like kept around on practice squad because he moved to wide receiver.
Yeah. I told you.
Well, he might have got arrested.
Puka?
Yeah.
I win. Culture of violence.
Weird because Javian Hawkins came from Cocoa, so if like you asked me to bet who would get arrested, it would be.
It depends. What did Puka get arrested for?
Hey, you win. Puka Williams had 3 kick returns in his career.
Boom, I win.
And was on a raw. All right, congrats, you win.
Thank you. What did he get arrested for? Before I advocate it. I don't want to advocate for it then. I'm not looking it
up. Anyway, Zack Charbonnet, to get back on track. He's put up 2,500 rushing yards the last 2 years. Man, he is an every down back who he physically imposes himself in the game. You know, and he's not the quickest guy in the world, but he does have good long speed when he builds up and gets out in space. His contact balance, he breaks a ton of tackles, and he is a banger who plays behind his pads and his feet like continue the churn. Like he's someone who never goes down easy anywhere on the field. And with that, I think he's a guy who can move around a little bit at 6 foot, 214 pounds. Like Charbonnet, I like him. I don't know if he's in the range for the Giants. I don't know where he's going to go, but man, like he just refuses to go down. And like I said, imposes himself on the game.
Yeah, 7th in yards after contact per attempt, 5th in runs of 10-plus yards, 6.8% explosive run rate, one of the best in this class, like within the top 10. Charbonnet just breaks tackles. I mean, that's just what he does. And for his size, I mean, just look at the size. 6 foot, 214. He's 22, turning 23 next January, so that's kind of a fine size. Just feels like a natural fit, and just feels like he's kind of slated to have a solid NFL career, and doesn't do anything maybe spectacular or flashy, but Charbonnet's going to do it. He's going to break tackles for you.
And I mean, I feel like he would be a really good fit for the Giants running game. And he's like, out of the 4 guys we're talking about, he's the best receiver. Like he's a really good route runner, with even a good catch radius and strong hands to catch the ball away from his body when there's contest. I saw him line up out wide, and he was able to stack a corner and get vertical, right? Like a lot of running backs can't do that type of stuff. Now, he's not someone who's he's not a make you miss type of guy. He's very much like, I'm going to throw you off my shoulders. But when he is in the open field, like he knows who he is, right? So he's not going to run up and try and use leverage against you and kill you at the last second like a Tyjae Spears is, who I'm excited to talk about. He kind of will break you down and set you up and then burst. And then it's kind of like a weaker tackle attempt from the players in the open field that he's able to run through those. Like it's pretty impressive for him to like understand who he is and what his game is. Like there was multiple times where he gets out in the open field and like I said, he has good build up speed, and he's got a defender in the open field, and he will kind of stutter step and break that guy down. Like I said, about 5 yards, and that stops that guy's momentum from working. And then he will break one way, and then that's just like a worse angle for the tackle, and he will end up breaking that and getting a big run. Now his vision isn't great, but he does like press the hole with like quick lateral jump cuts. And I think he's someone who kind of uses blockers as shields rather than setting the blocks up, if that makes any sense. Yeah, he's a guy who a lot of people love, and I get it, even though he only ran a 4.53 40, but he doesn't look slow out there. And I'm telling you, man, I have the soft spot in my heart for guys who will get behind their shoulder pads and bang.
Love banging.
I have him as a second round player.
Yeah, and that's why I'm not acting too enthused right now, because he's definitely going to be. I hope that he's out of the Giants' range. Like I'm not for picking a running back like in the second round right now.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see where backs go in this draft class. Like that's something that can always fluctuate from year to year. You remember like Khalil Herbert was there in the 6th round. You had what was the kid from Louisiana? Who was on the 49ers who got
Elijah
hurt.
Mitchell. We talked about him.
Elijah Mitchell, yeah.
Rob Sale.
The Rob Sale connection. Running back is just a weird one where it's like you see guys who you like and address, and most people like think is a good player, and they just fall. Like because of that, hey, we can get a running back later thing kind of does leak. And especially for a guy like Zack Charbonnet, where I could see it, is because he's not the freak athlete type of guy. Like, he is a get behind his pads, but also there's teams, AJ Dillon got drafted really much higher than we all thought AJ Dillon would get drafted.
Well, it takes one team to it takes one team and somebody like you to really, fall in love and be like, I think this guy's worth it for sure. But his skill set, it just feels like it's easily transferable to the NFL level. The way that he runs, the way that he plays, and the way that NFL teams, ask running backs to be productive, and that's get 4 yards to carry.
I'm taking him in fantasy drafts this year.
Taking him in fantasy drafts.
All right, next guy on this list is a very fun player, and we've watched him down the Senior Bowl and got really excited about him, and that's Tyjae Spears out of Tulane, 5'10", 201 pounds, had over 1,500 yards this past season with 21 touchdowns. I guess he had 1,800 yards when you include his receiving. Man, he is fast and elusive, and he is constantly looking for the big play, which can be a negative for him. And you talk about yards after contact. This guy was second in this class for yards after contact per rush. I think only behind Bijan Robinson. And he is elusive and is a make you miss guy. Like, he has stop-start ability. He will juke the shoes out of you. The negative, though, Justin, is his vision is pretty bad. There is just too many times where even he'll create negative runs, and sometimes and we've seen this with Saquon Barkley at times before this season, where it's like, hey, you broke one tackle, don't feel like you got to break 5 more tackles to make this a successful play. Like, you broke that one tackle in the backfield, that's the offensive line's fault. Your gifted ability was able to break it. Now get upfield and turn this into a 3-yard run instead of feeling like you got to turn this into a home run. And there was just too many times where it's like he would carry the run horizontally and not get upfield. And it's like, man, there's the gap. Go. And if you got vertical a half a second earlier, you got a 15, 20-yard run. Instead, this is a -1 to 1-yard run. But again, slippery and hard to tackle in the hole, too, not just in the open field. And in the open field, out of these guys, there's no one who's going to make you miss better than Tyjae Spears. And he could be a great weapon in the screen game. I think his route running needs polish. Tyjae Spears is, for the non-Bijan Robinson guys, is probably the most exciting back in the class.
Yeah, second best explosive run rate amongst this draft class. Averaged 7 yards per carry throughout his career. 4 runs of 10-plus yards in each of the last 4 games of the season. And I think that's significant because if you talk about a running back...
Won that game versus USC.
A running back that's taking a lot of carries and taking a lot of hits throughout the season... we know this with Saquon Barkley. Can they be at their best all throughout the season and especially at the end? And Tyjae Spears, at least his senior year, he was. And this includes the bowl game versus USC, like Bobby says, versus UCF, a top 25 opponent at the time, and Cincinnati. So you can look at it being like, well, who are they playing over at Tulane?
They gave him 35 carries versus Cincinnati, and he looked pretty damn good doing it too. There was negative runs in there, but he looked good against the best competition. That was exciting to see with Tyjae.
Yeah, and some plays versus Cincinnati where Spears beats, I'm thinking of in particular a touchdown where Spears beats Ivan Pace Jr. to the corner, and he kind of gives Ivan Pace Jr. a little bit of a juke in space, and then beats him to the corner of the end zone. Touchdown Tyjae Spears, touchdown Tulane. So, and even you're thinking, well, who are they playing at Tulane? Those are some pretty good opponents to end the season that Tulane had, and Tyjae Spears had a lot of success. 23 of his 35 10-plus yard runs came in the last 6 games of the season. So again, finishing the season strong. Bobby mentioned yards after contact per attempt, and I'm even going to tell you 1,052 of his 1,586 yards came after contact. He's a competitor, showed that competitive nature at the Senior Bowl. This is, for me, this year's James Cook, right? A guy that's fun, a guy that's exciting, and James Cook kind of taught me a lot of lessons. We'll see what James Cook's NFL career looks like, but I really liked Cook last year, looking at that explosive run rate metric. So I'm really putting Tyjae Spears, that kind of James Cook label on him of what you do it really well, and the big question is, can it transfer over to the NFL level? And can a coaching staff and maybe can the Giants, if Tyjae Spears is drafted, can they maybe surround Spears in a running back by committee that will utilize his strengths the best? I don't think Spears is a bell cow, can, take the ball 15 to 20 times a game and then lead an offense that way. I think Spears is going to be best utilized in a running back by committee, like most running backs, like most teams in the NFL, I feel like anyway. Running back by committee, but highlighting what he does well. And it's going to take a team to kind of do that and mold that around him. Do you agree?
Yeah, except for with James Cook, like James Cook wasn't strong through in between the tackles, where I think Tyjae Spears is. Like Tyjae Spears will make you miss in the open field, and he'll make you miss between the tackles.
I'm not giving the player comp. That's not what I intended to do. But I'm slapping the James Cook label on him, being like, "What's your NFL role?
He's a role player."
Yeah, what's your NFL role? How is it going to transfer? It's not just an automatic slam dunk. All right, here's your RB1, and here's kind of like your full-time running back. No.
Like he will be, like you said, he will be used in a running back by committee. Like you said, I don't see him being an 18 to 20 carries. I don't see him being like, hey, this is our lead running back type of guy.
Right.
But I do see him being able to split time and be 50-50 with another good back and being very successful too. But you do have to coach him up. Like you don't want to take away like the big playability, but you kind of have to coach him up. Be like, hey, in the NFL, man, this isn't an East-West league. This is a North-South league. Get North-South and then let your superstardom be, your star ability shine. Don't be trying to win the game in the backfield, which again, there's just too much of that where, I'm talking about like, man, you should have cut 2 seconds ago and you're still carrying this, you're still pressing this hole horizontally instead of getting upfield and you're leaving yards on the field.
Yeah.
So that's the issue with Tyjae Spears is like he will create negative runs instead of getting upfield. But with that too is he is patient. Like he is patient through the hole and then bam, he will burst out of it and create a big play. And we saw that happen with him a lot at Tulane. So Tyjae Spears, not the best back in this class or the guys we're talking about, but I think he's the most fun. Like I think he's more fun to watch than Charbonnet and Kendre Miller. And those guys are fun to watch too.
And I think Tyjae Spears has more of a realistic chance to be a Giant than Charbonnet, who we just talked about.
All right, last running back we talk about before we get into the tight ends. This guy plays up to his name, Tank Bigsby. His parents knew what they were doing when they named this kid. Running back out of Auburn, 6 foot, 210, so big but not huge. Had 2,000 yards over the last season, basically 970 last year, 1,100 the year before. Not a flashy back, but there's something about his game that I love. Is this guy does not create negative runs, and he takes runs that should be negative runs and turns them into positive. So he is very much like hey, I want to push the pile, I want to hit the hole, and I want to hit it hard, and I want to fall forward. But every time I saw there be something, a defender that's leaking into the backfield, he's not a make-you-miss guy, but he would make that guy miss and then burst and bounce, need to bounce the play. And again, he only bounces the run at appropriate times. So he's not super elusive, but when guys are in the backfield, he's able to miss those guys and create positive runs. And again, he has a great feel of seeing a play breaking down, seeing hey, this blocker is not going to sustain this. He's going to get beat inside. I'm going to cut outside. He's got really good vision. He likes to get upfield and push the pile. Here's where I want a realistic improvement in his game that I want though. When he is in the open field, he will fall forward, but he almost dives forward and kind of I'm going to get 3 yards, where it's if you could still play behind your pads and maybe try and break through these tackles and turn the bigger run, where he's just kind of okay with, hey, I'm going to fall forward, get my extra 3 yards.
Yeah. What's impressive about Tank Bigsby is that he was able to still be productive and efficient enough when this Auburn offensive line and this Auburn team and this Auburn offense was really, really bad this year. Really, really bad. They were one of the worst offensive lines in the SEC. And despite that, he averaged the 7th most rushing yards after contact per attempt with 4.2. As a true freshman, maybe when those Auburn teams were a little bit better, he ranked tied for 3rd in the Power 5 with a 34% forced missed tackle rate, which that's not really a metric that, evolves around offensive line specifically. But this year. 6th in yards after contact per attempt amongst draft-eligible players. He was 7th in explosive run rate as well. And I think Tank Bigsby's game, very different from Tyjae Spears. I think kind of his role and his projection to the league is kind of like, I think he can be a bell cow back. I think he can be an RB1 where, you're playing on first and second down. I don't know if you have any evaluation on him as a pass blocker, but he's not a small running back. Shouldn't at least by his weight.
Didn't really put him in much. I think it needs improvement. They didn't put him in. For a guy that plays like him, I wanted to see him be a better blocker. Like I saw Kendre Miller be a better blocker than Bigsby.
But first and second down, Tank Bigsby's on the field, and you're not concerned about his projection there.
Yeah, like you said, you feel comfortable giving this guy a load of carries. Now he's gotten a lot of carries, at Auburn too. He got 138 carries. I guess that's not too many, but in his 2020 season,
turning 22 in August.
Yeah, basically all these guys are either 22, just turned 22, or turned 22, and then Kendre Miller's the young one out of the group. Yeah. So the running back is definitely the youngest part of the class,
right?
For any position.
But it's still important to look at with running backs, even though they are a little bit younger. It's important to look at how many carries they're getting. A lot of these guys that we were talking about, they've gotten like 2 years of like, you are the running back in the offense work. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of part of the evaluation for sure.
Who was the running back who had like less than 100 carries that we talked about in 2000? I think in 2020 as well. And we ended up signing him as a young undrafted free agent that I liked.
Was it Deshaun Corbin?
Javon Leake.
2020. Yeah,
he was a kick returner out of Maryland. I liked him.
Yes.
He came into camp. He did well in that. Remember that little blue-white scrimmage during COVID. So, yeah. So again, he's like you said, not going to bring you much receiving value. He needs to improve as a blocker. So if you want to, like right now, I wouldn't put him on the field on third downs, but he has really good vision. He knows when to bounce it, when to not, and he's going to get you your 4 or 5 yards. Like, he's going to be consistent in that, and there's a lot of value in the league in that.
Yeah. And he has experience of running behind not a great offensive line, which, you may get that in the NFL. It's not like you're drafting
a running with the Giants.
You may get that with the Giants. So
hopefully not. Top 30 visit too.
Hopefully not.
All right, Justin, why don't you read an ad, and then we'll talk about some tight ends.
Oh, you threw me off guard. I am not ready to read an ad.
Puka Williams was arrested and charged with domestic battery at Kansas for punching his girlfriend and grabbing her by the throat. He now plays in the XFL for the DC Defenders as a backup kick returner.
I hate Puka Williams.
I won.
I hate Puka Williams. See, this is why I didn't want to endorse the culture of violence before, but I did it. But I took it back. I give up victory. Today's episode is sponsored by SeatGeek. That's the ad. If you don't know what SeatGeek is, they're a ticketing app that they make buying tickets super terrifically easy and simple. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app ever on the planet. No doubt about it. You can put it on the board. There are more than 70,000 events every single day on SeatGeek, including sports, concerts, festivals, and so much more. They always want to make sure that you are getting a good deal. So even when you're on the app, look for those green dots, because green, that means good. And I don't know if you knew, but red, that's a bad color, and that means that it's a bad deal. Every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantees, and SeatGeek is the only site that lets you return your tickets ahead of the event with swaps. We've got the hookup. Use code GIANTS to get $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code GIANTS. Click the link in the description to download the app. You'll be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did. All right. This first tight end we're going to talk about, I almost feel a little dirty because he is like projected for a second round. But the Giants did take a top 30 visit with him, so I think it'd be worth talking about him. And that is Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. 6'6", 253 pounds, ran a 4.61 40. He's athletic. Now, here's the thing: had a knee injury, only played 2 games this last year. Now, in those 2 games, like he had the most yards per route run for tight ends. in this class. And I think he's just going to be a QB-friendly guy. One, you have the really good speed with elite get-off, right? Like, he has the highest 10-yard split in the class for tight ends, which I think matters even almost more so for the tight end spot than the 40-yard dash. I think this guy's just going to be a good friend for the quarterback. He moves well, very smooth getting in and out of his breaks. He understands route cell, and he reads leverage of defenders. Like, if a linebacker's trying to reroute him, he's got quick hips to avoid it. And he got a good catch radius and go up and make some, like, tough catches down the field, like 20-plus yards. Like, I think he'd be explosive. Musgrave, I think, is like he's going to be I think he's going to be a really good tight end in the NFL. I really do.
All right,
I have a late first grade on him.
Here's my first little tangent on drafting tight ends early that I'm now kind of learning more that we do football, more that we do draft. The NFL is really bad at evaluating tight ends. Like, we thought that Pat Freiermuth was going to be an absolute slam dunk, second round, 55th overall.
He's been good.
I can see that's but I mean, still, if you look at what a second round pick should be, I mean, should it be more than, maybe 60 catches and, the bet he had this year, 732 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, it's fine. If it's rookie year, he had 7 touchdowns, which is promising. Touchdowns are kind of
I don't like you shitting on Freiermuth. He's been good, especially with some bad quarterback and offensive
He's been
scheming.
Good. But my overall question is, with tight ends, like, is it worth, like, does that value and does that stat line really, is it worth that second round pick? And Freiermuth, I think, is an exception. Freiermuth is an exception because I think if you look at, Trey McBride, who's also taken 55th 1 year later, how does his game kind of translate? Obviously his rookie year with bad quarterback play wasn't that great. They already had another tight end there in Arizona anyway. So drafting tight ends is certainly interesting because I think the NFL and generally people are bad at evaluating what tight ends are going to be good or not. We always talk about all the time here how boring is good. Like, boring is good for tight ends. And there's somebody who we're going to talk about later from Michigan who is like, if you're thinking about drafting Luke Musgrave in the first or second round, just draft this guy in like the third round, and I think it's kind of like the same thing. But Musgrave's good. I mean, he's probably going to be one of the fastest tight ends in the NFL when he gets drafted to a team and when he puts on pads this September. He hit a top speed of like 20 miles per hour at the Senior Bowl. He's had some bad luck because the knee injury this year and then also his COVID, his shortened season of 2020 for COVID. It's left a kind of like a lack of consistency on the field and a lack of a stat line. But really, it's just, is Musgrave really worth that kind of label of, a first round pick or a high second round pick? Is it really worth it when, that's my question. Is it really worth it?
No, he's not worth it for the Giants.
No, I'm asking really for really any team.
If I were the Giants and we didn't take, if we didn't trade for Dan Waller, he would absolutely be a target for me at 57. Not at 25.
Did you talk about his blocking?
No, I mean, there's a lot to be desired as a blocker, but you see some good stuff. It's defensive linemen slip off him pretty consistently, so there is a lot there to be desired as a blocker. But like, I can see him being in 2 tight end sets and not being a liability either.
Because also for me, you look at the salary cap of tight ends that get like second deals, like the fact that Evan Ingram is making over $10 million. Was it Dalton Schultz who didn't get necessarily the contract that he wanted? So it's not even just looking at the certain players that are drafted early and their play, but it's also looking at, well, when you draft a guy early, first or second round, the ultimate goal is to sign him to a second contract. And it just feels like you look at the tight ends that are being paid over $10 million, and it's not, besides if it's, the Kittles and the Kelseys of the world, and those are like game-changing, franchise-altering players, it may not be worth it. So if Luke Musgrave turns into Dalton Schultz, that's a success. Yes.
But I could see him turning into like a Dallas Goedert. Like, is Dallas Goedert a good second round pick by the Eagles?
Yes. You punched him. Funny story about Dallas Goedert.
Oh, I did. I South Dakota punched him in the face. I almost thought about putting the South Dakota tight end on this list just to bring that up.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about guys who are realistic options for the Giants. I don't know why they brought Musgrave in for a top 30 visit. It's another Luke. If we draft him, what do we chant? Luke or Schoon? Luke Schoonmaker, the tight end out of Michigan. People complain. Shane specifically, like, why don't you talk about Michigan players? Back-to-back episodes. 6'5", 251 pounds. Moves well, Justin. So, I'll be honest, I got really, really, really excited about Luke Schoonmaker. And that excitement went away a good amount when I saw that he's going to be 25 in the season. He's very, very old. But this, to me, is a if you just said, like, hey, he's 22 and a half, I'm like, this is a versatile tight end who has the room to grow into a dynamic player. Like, you just mentioned, like, how tight ends will just show up out of nowhere and become stars, like, out of the late rounds. My bet would have been Luke Schoonmaker. Maybe that can still happen despite the fact that he's 25 years old. But he's a solid athlete with just better movement than long speed. And he can block, dude. Like, and in multiple ways. Like, go watch him versus Jack Campbell in Iowa. No one did a better job blocking Jack Campbell than Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. You know, an inline blocker, like, he lands his hands, he extends and is able to sustain those blocks really, really well. Like, he keeps his feet square with a good base. You use him as a move blocker. Like, you put him out on the perimeter, he's going to land that block and sustain it. You put him in H-back role, have him lead up. Not his best role, but he still does a good job getting to that. I would like to see a little more aggression in that. And then he has all the athleticism and, like, the ability to, like, you know, sink his hips in the transition in and out of breaks that, while his route running needs refinement, it definitely does. But, like, you can see him turning into a good receiving threat. Like, this is an exciting player. It's just the age throws you off a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, negatives, like you said, he's not much of a yak threat. He needs to be more aggressive attacking the ball, right? Like, go up and get the ball. Like, don't let the ball come to you. You go get the ball. And then for a guy who's as good as blocking as him, I'm kind of dumbfounded by this. He gets rerouted really easily, right? And at the stem of routes, like, he kind of doesn't absorb that contact well. And there's just too many times where it's like, hey, man, why don't you try and influence that DB and then break off of it, where he's almost like running into the player and, you know, allowing that guy to stay in the hip. But in zone, like, he knows how to make himself, you know, open. You know, he can run, like, the basic Y routes in the quick game. And, again, I think he has ability to become, you know, a 15-plus yard threat, too, on the field. He just needs refinement in his route running.
For sure.
I mean, if we're not factoring in age, I have him as top of the third round.
Yeah, it's fair. Absolutely.
Yeah, factoring in age, but I like him, you know, and I was talking with Robert Smits about him. He likes him. Eric Turner of the Cover One guys, like, he's a guy that people like, but again, 25 years old is going to keep teams from probably. I don't think he's going to go on day two because of the age.
Yeah. And
we're not talking about a guy who he has a receiving ability, but he's not like a huge receiving threat right now. And there needs to be refinement there. That being paired with, like, do you want to take a guy that needs a good amount of refinement at 25 years old? The next guy in this list was our Senior Bowl crush. Fell in love with this guy out of Purdue. 6'6", 253 pounds, Payne Durham, and he brings the pain. And guess what? He had good receiving production at Purdue, right? He had 560 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns this past year. Now, here's the big thing with him. This is why he cannot be a round 3. He could maybe go into the 4th round pick. He's as slow as they come. His speed, I mean, he ran a 4.87 40, and it was very noticeable down at Mobile. Like, this guy he is flat out slow. He is unathletic. You know, and that's obviously going to stop him from beating man coverage. But he is a good enough route runner to come open versus zone in the quick game, you know, the Y stick type of stuff. And he is a great catcher of the football. Like, catches with his hands, makes tough contested. Like, everything that's thrown to him, he's going to catch. Like, he positions his body and boxes out defenders. Even in the Senior Bowl, there was times where they threw the ball. Like, I can't believe this dude caught it. And there was, you know, if you get a team that's running cover 3 that's not man matching, you could put him in the seam and get him a chunk play that way. But the reason you love him is my man blocks like a tackle. He is an inline blocker who works angles, sustains really well. You can move him into a fullback role as that H and just put him in space, work him on screens. Like he is a beast in the run game, and just he does so many things well, but he has the prerequisite. He doesn't have the prerequisite of being even modestly fast. Like he is as slow as they come.
This is the boring that we love, though, right? Just because
but this is a guy you take in the 5th round, Justin, and he plays on your team day one, and he plays on your team every single year. And that's why I like Payne Durham. Not because I think he's ever going to be some dynamic tight end, but he's someone I can see being there in the 5th round and taking in the 5th round. And I'm like, this guy has a role on my team for the next 4 years guaranteed.
Yeah, because when you look at the success of draft picks or not, I think Joe Shane even talked about this too during the presser today, where he looks at games played, he looks at projecting as a starter or not. Was Payne Durham going to be a starter in the NFL? No, but I think he will have a role in the NFL. And I think when you evaluate a draft pick 3 years out from now, and Payne Durham is getting 40%, 35% ish of the snaps, maybe contribute on special teams, I don't know, whatever, fine. That will be a successful draft pick. And if you look at the impact that he has as a blocker, if you're a team that's dedicated to running the ball, maybe even outside zone, where you're relying on the outside, outside the tackle to hold up in their blocks and not be a liability there, Payne Durham is going to be a successful draft pick. He won't be a superstar, but he will be a successful draft pick to whatever team kind of picks him up.
Yeah, I love Payne Durham for what he is. He's a want. Basically every mock draft video, because I've been doing the Bleacher Report live streams, just do a mock draft. Not going to do that next week. It's all right, 5th round, give me Payne Durham, right? I feel good about that pick. So yeah, fell in love with down the Senior Bowl, excited. And the Giants took a top 30 visit with him. So how often is a guy coming in for a top 30 visit that runs a 4.89 40 in the combine? Or a 4.87 40 for a tight end? Not often. Yeah. Not often is what I say. All right. The next guy on this list, this guy could go late 2nd. I don't think so. Or go late 6th round pick. This guy is going to be... I cannot wait to see just where this guy is drafted because I'm intrigued by him. And that is Old Dominion tight end Zack Kuntz, who's 6'7", 255 pounds, 34-inch arms. Perfect tight end frame. Well, guess what? His testing, 4.55 40, 40-inch vertical jump, 6.87 3-cone drill, 4.12 shuttle, bench press 23. I mean, if you're creating a combine Madden player, it is Zack Kuntz, the tight end out of Old Dominion, right? He is the prototype size and athletic profile for the tight end spot. Long speed is good get off. He will challenge you at all 3 levels. His change of direction is smooth, getting in and out of breaks. But the biggest but of all time in this draft class, he is not a good football player. His route running needs a ton of work from a technical standpoint. He uses no route cell. His routes are basically you draw them up on the board, a post, straight angle. That's what he does. There is no nuance to his route running. And often, he is just running into the DBs. He is running into the DBs on a straight line, not using any influence, using any route cell on them, and they are getting physical, and he's basically covering himself the way he runs routes. And has a total lack of physicality and can be rerouted very easily. Doesn't tempo his routes at all.
He kind of plays like a big wide receiver. Just a really big wide receiver.
Yeah, a bad wide receiver. Has a bad feel for zone, finding the holes in zone. A body catcher, often bobbles the ball, Justin. And then his blocking is pathetic. You cannot have him as a play side blocker in line. And then Old Dominion tried to use him as, a move blocker and wham. It was pathetic. He blocked with it was one thing to not be a good blocker in those situations. He did it with hesitation and no aggression. So I have him as a 6th round player, but the guy is you put him on a Madden team, he's gonna kill. So it's you have this ball of clay, and I'm sure he didn't have the best coaching in the world at Old Dominion. So He's this ball of clay who the Giants brought in for a top 30 visit that he has the ability to be a superstar. But it's like you have so much to work on his game with.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. And is he not the tough last name? By the way, I don't even want to flirt around talking about saying it. This is the ultimate epitome of what I've been talking about this entire episode. You know, Justin having his little thing with tight end positional value, whatever. This is the perfect example of the NFL like not being good with tight ends because they could be, you know, Zack could be turned into a star, or he could turn into a guy who's barely going to play 3 years down the line, right? Like both realities, maybe not a star, but you know, he could turn into a really good NFL tight end. Both realities, you can agree that they both exist, right?
Yeah, I want to go see where he's ranked on Dane Brugler just to see where he has him to get a feel. Let's see. For tight ends, he has him ranked 10th and as a 4th to 5th rounder. So that's where he's going to go, right? He's going in the 4th and the 5th round.
Maybe.
Somebody is going to bet on that talent and think they can coach him up. The question is, can he be coached up, and how well what is he going to be coached up to?
That's a great question.
He's also going to be 24 in a month, so he's not the youngest guy in the world either. Yep. Here's what bothers me a lot about it, and it's why I have him as a 6 and maybe not as like a late 4th rounder, is that he blocks with hesitancy. At least if he was a bad blocker, there'd be some aggression in it, but it's not there. But so I am glad the Giants brought this guy in for a top 30 visit. This is the type of guy you bring in the top 30 visit for and see what his mental makeup is. Because if you can find out and talk to people, I'm like, hey, this guy's a grinder. Like, it didn't have the resources at Old Dominion to grow, wasn't asked to do much. Like, that could be, if you find out this guy's a dog, like he's gonna work, he's gonna get better, then I'm celebrating the Zack Kuntz draft pick if that happens.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. It's tough to project. It's just very tough to project that.
One more draft preview, and that is wide receivers coming on Monday. And then I'll be in New York City. We'll be doing our mock draft episode, draft stream. Stick around. Draft content's going to be awesome. Film breakdowns, it's going to be wild. Since we got a couple minutes left, I'm glad we finished a little early. Can we talk about Twitter taking away blue check marks?
Yeah, long-term win for us.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think it's, I mean, I guess if their goal is like, hey, we just want to make as much money as possible, it's a win. But it's like, it does make the app worse. Like, I didn't agree with it, but the troll in me loves it.
Yeah. To
see the people lose their mind about it, and then the other people pretend they're not mad about it, but you can just read through their tweets, like, and they'll be like, I'm not mad. I'm saying I don't care about this. But, like, there was a sports writer who talked about how this is going to be dangerous in emergency situations. If anything, it's going to help. Because guess what? Big issue with the blue check marks was randoms having blue check marks and will report stuff, and people would just believe it. We did this with GT Bobby Thompson. People were taking his word as gospel just because he had a blue check mark, and it's like, I'm telling you guys, he's nobody. He doesn't know anything.
All right, so now it's actually on the individual
to go and find out, is this person a reliable source, and not just believing every blue check mark that pops up and tweets out sources say or rumor is this. Like, you have to. It's so. Like, it almost helps with that, but give the reporters their blue check marks. It does help you, like, gain a following and stuff, too. Like, we've seen it do wonders for the Talking Giants account, which... Yeah. But it's been very funny. Like, all right, so Rich Eisen's a friend of John Boy Media, so I'm not going to go too hard. And he was sitting face-to-face with me. I would joke about this with him.
Yeah.
He tweets out 16 hours ago, like, I'm not defined by a blue check mark. Which,
good for
one,
you.
is just a weird tweet. Like, it's like, I'm definitely not sad and mad right now. Mm-hmm. And then he made his header his old blue check mark. So it's like, you love that blue check mark, my friend. You love it. And then it's like, yeah, people are making blue check marks their header. It's like, man, this blue check mark was was very, very important to you.
It was very, very important.
So it's been pretty funny.
Part of it's, I mean, Elon just taking something that
he's
like,
a troll,
people,
and it's annoying. Like, he's made the site worse.
Yeah, he has made it worse. But it's one of those things where it's funny for a day, and then it's like, all right, well,
yeah, it'll be annoying in a couple of days.
Yep, it'll be annoying then. It gave me everybody sharing their banner pictures. It gave me an opportunity to remind everybody what my banner picture is, and it will not change for a while. It will eventually change.
We got to figure out a good picture to change it to. I don't think I'll ever change mine. And
that's Carl Banks. Carl Banks telling me that I just do this for a hobby.
I love my banner picture is that. I love it. I'll never change it. Speaking of which, I got to ask you something. Well, I'm just telling you something after the show.
Okay.
About a gift. I want to get somebody a gift. All right. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back Monday with your wide receiver draft preview. Get excited. The Giants are drafting a wide receiver in the first round. We are batting 1,000. We are batting 1,000 on our last preview pod being a position the Giants draft in the first round. Quarterback in 2019, offensive tackle in 2020, wide receiver in 21, and then offensive tackle last year with Evan Neal. So we appreciate you guys. Enjoy your weekend, because next weekend ain't a weekend. Next weekend is work. We are going draft heavy in a Chevy. We'll see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.